Hi, everybody. My name is Kathy Burrell, and I'm the Client Services Coordinator here at WeBC. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that we're gathered here today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Okanagan Syilx people. We recognize, honor, and respect the presence of Indigenous people, past, present, and future. And welcome, everybody. We've got a full house today and a lot of people on the session, so yeah, it's going to be great. I would invite anyone that's on the call today to write in the chat whose traditional territories that you're on. And Jen will provide a link just in case you're not sure. And go ahead and say hi. You can say your first name and where you're from. We'd like to know kind of where everybody's at. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Kathy Burrell, and we would love to hear from you. If there's a topic that you're really interested in that you think that WeBC could provide for you, so in a future webinar, at the end of the session, if you don't have to run off right away, we would just really appreciate if you could stay on just for an extra couple of minutes and do our feedback poll. And at that time, if you've got a webinar topic that you think that we should offer, we would love for you to put that in there. Okay, I'm just going to do a little blurb on what we offer here at WeBC. We offer support for your small business journey. We offer financing to get your business started and operating capital to fuel your growth. We offer more flexibility than traditional lenders like RBC or, TD Bank or something like that, because we take a holistic approach and provide loans based on your business's viability, not based on formulas. So we ask to see your business plan and your cash flow before we give you a loan application. So this means we provide loans to a diverse range of women-owned businesses and support you with integrated services, including complimentary training, mentoring, and business advising. And if I could say there's one reason why you should get a loan with WeBC, it's that. We would provide you with a loan, and if the term of the loan is 5 years, we would provide complimentary mentoring and business advising for the whole 5 years. From essential business skills development to personalized business advice, we know the right questions to ask and the right resources to connect you with. In our mentoring programs, we've got some really good ones starting this fall. You can connect with a network of women entrepreneurs and experts around BC who can support and inspire you. And if anyone's on the call today who is maybe winding their business down or wants to volunteer as a mentor, we would love to have you. You can learn more about our services at we-bc.ca. That's our website. You'll see it on this webinar over and over again. And we'd love you to sign up for our e-blast newsletter so that you get notified of our new programs, as we have a ton of great offerings coming up this fall. Okay, so on to today's webinar. We'd like to welcome Barry. Barry Payne, Supply Team Leader with Indigenous Entrepreneurship Center of Excellence and Procurement Assistance Canada. So low dollar value contracts can be a powerful entry point for small businesses selling to the federal government. That's what this webinar is all about. Barry Payne is a seasoned entrepreneur who has sold over $200 million in goods and service. Yes, 200 million to the federal government. And he started out with low dollar value contracts. Today, Barry will walk you through the 3 simple steps that helped him get started and helped him grow his business from 0 to 200 million. Barry will share real life lessons, practical tips, and inside insights drawn from his experience. We'd like to welcome Barry to our webinar today, and I am going to stop sharing and let Barry get on with the show.
Great. Thanks, Kathy. And thanks for inviting me. This is definitely one of my favorite, if not the favorite, events I like to do. Anytime I get to talk about low dollar value, that's kind of my passion. A little different than most of the presentations you'll see from federal government. I was a supplier to the federal government for over 25 years. And, I know a lot of our presentations revolve around RFPs and things like that. And to me, right out of the gate, writing an RFP or responding to an RFP is kind of like buying a Ferrari and not having a driver's license. You just, it's not the way to go. my kind of philosophy or the methodology that I realized over time was start out small. In the private sector, you wouldn't go into a client or a new possible new client and say, hey, give me all your business when they have, they don't know you and they don't know your capacity or anything like that. What low dollar value allows you to do is actually get in. I call it, it's a good place. It's aware on how to start with the federal government because it gives the departments a chance to know you. You get to know the department. Every department has a different personality and things like that. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of low dollar value. As I said, or Kathy touched on, I really didn't start from square or zero. I started out of the trunk of my car, literally. I got us on a supply arrangement and drove back and forth to Ottawa every day for a couple of years. And it got easier as time went on. I called it the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow because after, 6, 8 months, I started getting business and making the relationships that were required to kind of keep the lights on and food on the table. And so through all that process, I kind of really learned what worked and what didn't work. I jokingly used to say I was a subject matter expert for doing everything wrong. Um, and one of the great things, I guess, is over 25 years, you get to know a lot about departments in and out. I was able to leverage my experience with the federal government, my track record with the federal government in order to kind of expand outside the federal government. Great thing about the Canadian federal government is we buy everything, literally everything. And I one time I was doing a seminar down in Sarnia, Ontario, and one of the gentlemen there made homemade saddles. And it kind of threw me for a loop. And we kind of went into the search, and lo and behold, turns out RCMP buys saddles every year. Another kind of category or commodity that I kind of first learned actually was, I think the first WeBC event was somebody said, "Oh, I do catering." And I had to think for a while. And then after that, I went back and I searched and I realized that, yeah, everybody buys catering in the federal government. Every time we have an in-person meeting or a training course, there's a person that's kind of tasked with finding, pizza or food or whatever. And the whole idea is to kind of keep changing it up. And what I realized is best person for that would be like a director's assistant or, somebody that's up there. And they're very easy to find. Something to keep in mind. What I like to talk about 3 easy steps because basically it is 3 easy steps. It's just 3 pages. And each of these pages they all kind of work together. And when I'm working with them, I keep them all open. Now, what I'm going to show you today is, like I said, my way of doing it. But what I want to preface as well is when we come on these presentations, I like to talk about what PAC is and what PAC does and things like that. After this presentation, I welcome everybody to reach out to either PAC or myself to follow up. We like to give one-on-ones, and I personally myself, after doing presentations like this, I like people to kind of reach out to me and I can actually spend time with you one-on-one and going through your product line. I know there's a lot of folks on here today, so I may need some help from other people on my team if we get inundated. But it's just patience and I'll get to everybody anyhow. But one of the things that I've noticed is typically when I share the three pages and if I explain it properly, I call it homework. I'm going to say probably 80 to 90% of the people I show it to get it and they're able to understand it and they're able to work through it. And I'll usually get a feedback saying, hey, you know what? It was easier than I thought. So I'll try to go slow, very informal. I'm not a professional presenter by any means. I always call myself a sales grunt and just, one of the great things about the federal government is unlike the private sector where it's cold calling, we all hate that word cold calling, it's a warm call. It's the government's our procurement is built to be transparent, it's built to be open, it's built to be accessible. One of the things that I like to talk about is I hear people say, I reached out to them and I never heard back. And one of the things that I like to talk about is it takes multiple times, multiple touches. And I talk about things like that during the one-on-ones. But what I like to do right now is kind of get started, talk about, and I'll share some stories at each point if I can. And if you have questions or something, throw them in the chat. We can kind of maybe address them as we go along. I know we don't have a lot of time, but hopefully we have enough time. And I think we have some question and answer at the end. But I think when you kind of see this and understand it, you'll understand that, hey, this is an opportunity because one thing about the government is we do have our, the RFPs, and we also have low dollar value. Low dollar value is anybody in the federal government with procurement authority can buy up to $25,000 in goods, $40,000 in services. Services would be like consulting and that kind of stuff. And then there's 10 mandatory commodities that procurement people have to buy off a supply arrangement. But again, once you get to that supply range, it's just another pre-qualified list. Again, you can revert back to low dollar value. So with further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and bear with me when I hope everybody can see that. And okay, I'll start from the beginning. There we go. As I said, Canadian federal government in 3 easy steps. First off, I'd like to give you a bit of an overview of what we procured annually. It should be, this is kind of outdated. It's about 37 million last year, I think, what I heard. So it's quite large. Again, 25,000 for goods and 40,000 for services. That has to include taxes. Okay, so it's kind of a little bit less. And unlike larger purchases, people can actually just buy from you because they like you, or that's why I like the whole concept of this, because you get in and you reach out. Don't sell them like the whole floor if you're doing furniture or something. I started by saying, hey, you know what, I understand you have relationships, give us a try. Buy a chair. When I first started, I was building those cubicles for the federal government, and they had desks and chairs and things like that. That's how I started out. So when I went in, I wanted to learn about their department. And I also, wanted to get started. So I would start out small. They would get to know me, I'd get to know them. And that's what you want to do. Not they talk about 74% of all contracts are under $1 million. The latest figure I hear is about 80% or almost 90% of all contracts are under $100,000. So you can see how much of a focus we actually have on low dollar value. Over 2 million credit card transactions every year. Credit card transactions are typically anything under $10,000, which unfortunately we haven't tracked in the past, but my understanding is with the new way forward with SAP or even that, we're going to be able to do that. So you can see where there's a lot of opportunity to get in, and it really is a way to keep the lights on and food on the table, because it doesn't take a whole lot of $10,000, $20,000 contracts to keep things going for you. First page that I use is what I call the search government contracts over $10,000. I think Jennifer is going to pop that into the chat. This is the first page, and basically what this page is a site that has everything the Canadian federal government has procured over $10,000 since 2009. So literally, if you want to find out if the government's bought it or does buy it, this is the page to go to. I tell people, and I have it on my phone, put it on your smartphone and you're sitting at Tim Hortons one day having a coffee, and get, hey, I wonder if the government buys this. You can pop that in there and it'll tell you if they do or not. When you go to this page, it will look like something like this. And you would put your keyword in. Sorry, I'm going to keep moving my thing around. You would use your keyword right here on the search line. And when it happens, when you get a hit, you would scroll down through that list and you would find all the contracts that would have that word. So in my case, I used the word furniture. And then you can see it. So anything with the word furniture would be highlighted. And then what you can do is scroll down, find the one that works best for you, kind of meets what you're looking for, because there is some what I call basic information on that page that'll kind of tell you. I recommend to people when they're starting out, it's something you may want to spend some time looking at the majority of those contracts. You can see the different ways and things like that they've inputted the information. Something to keep in mind is that the newer or closer we get to present day, you'll find that those contracts will actually have more information than the early ones. Early ones were just kind of, I don't know why, but people didn't really populate them a whole lot. And you can actually see this ABI, Advanced Business, the first one was $18,000. So it was a low dollar value. And furniture is one of the commodities that you have to buy off of a pre-qualified list. But again, they went to low dollar value. So here's when you click on, I'll bounce back. When you click on the company name, ABI Advanced, it would actually take you to a second page that gives you contract details. This is what you really need to look at in order to find, who to talk to, who bought it. And in this case, we can look at it, we can see, if we scroll down, we'll see that was the Parole Board of Canada bought it. It even gives us the name of the guy, the person that bought it, Martin Stein. So now we not only know who bought it, we know who the procurement person was. And then we scroll down a little bit further to additional details. You'll see that it was a call up against a supply arrangement or standing offer. It will also give us the standing offer number. So what I would do here is typically I would take that standing offer number and I go over to Google and I pop it into Google. And Google does a great job of telling us what I call additional information. Sometimes it'll show things like who the other companies were that bought it, that kind of stuff. So, and this is what I did here. Oh, okay, I'll do it manually, I guess. But as I said, I'm not the greatest presenter at these, and I don't know why. Let me see what happened here. Why I can't. Oh, there it goes. Just when you enlarge it, still learning. I would, as I said, I would copy it. I would put it into Google, where you can see that supply arrangement number, and there's all the companies that came up on that at the number. Adirondack, by the way, was the company that I had started out. I can still use it because we sold the company in 2015, so it's been gone a long time. And actually, the company that bought it just bought out my supply arrangements and included it into theirs. So it kind of shows us, and in this case, it's telling us the different companies. It'll tell us what categories and that kind of stuff. So I typically keep that page open, just kind of reference it. Then what I do is, if you remember from page one, I have the department that bought it. I have the person who bought it. Now, how do I find who to talk to? Oop. Well, first thing I would do is go to the hyperlink here, which will get put in the chat again. This is a government electronic phone book. It contains everybody in the entire Canadian federal government except for RCMP, National Defense, and CSIS for obvious reasons, security reasons. So when you click on that, it will take you to a page that looks something like this. And again, we could do a number of things here. We can put Martin Stein's name in right off the bat. Or we can even do, if it was a case of where we didn't get somebody's name, but we want to find out who the contracting person or his procurement people, you can put those in there as well. And it'll give you a general, anybody with that wording in their title. Personally, myself, I like to be organized. What I would do is I would use something like HubSpot or something like a CRM that in my case was free, HubSpot. And I would kind of use it as kind of my organizational, because when we start doing an outreach, we want to target, we want to follow up, and we want to be very methodical at it. So I would actually go by the department. And by doing that, you would actually go to the drop-down list and you can see the departmental listing. We would select that. And then it gives you a listing of all the departments across the Canadian federal government. Last time I counted, I think there was about 172 or 173 departments. So there's quite a bit. And like I said, I would start out doing this very methodically, and I would use something like HubSpot for a very simple reason. I call it my honey-do list, really, seriously, because when you reach out to these folks, you're going to have to do it multiple times. I, over a period of time, discovered it takes me 4 to 5 touches before I'd actually get to the person or get a response. So the first time I'd reach out to them, it's by email. I keep it very short. And I'd say, hi, it's so-and-so. I just was hoping and I always mention my company. And in my case, if I was Indigenous or women-owned, I'd put that in there. And I said, I'd just like to have a brief chat with you. Don't say anymore, because 90% of the time, they probably won't get a chance to read it. They're just inundated. Then I go back to HubSpot and tell HubSpot, remind me in a week or so to get back to this person. So in about a week or so, I would then follow up by a phone message. And again, I keep the phone message very brief if their message mailbox isn't full. I would say, hey, it's so-and-so. I wanted to follow up on an email I sent you previously. I was hoping I could set up a time to have a brief chat with you. Go back to my HubSpot. And in HubSpot, I would remind again a week or so. Now we're probably 2 to 3 weeks since that first connection or that first outreach. But in the third one, I would put in an email, say, hi, it's so-and-so. Again, I mentioned my company. I mentioned whether I'm a woman-owned or Indigenous, in some cases, both, if you can be. And the reason why I'm reaching out to you, and talk about your service here. Because typically what happens, a lot of times is they may not be that person. In the case of Martin Stein, who was a he may be he may be that person, but he's a contracting officer. And contracting officers are typically just the people that do the actual paperwork. And they're also the people that do the RFPs. And I'll explain a little bit that later about how they come into play. But again, what's happened now is they know you've been tracking them. You're not going away. But what they would do when they respond to you typically is they'll CC in the person that you should be talking to. And sometimes I've had to go 4 times, or I don't think I've ever had to go 5, but usually three to four times. I always call 3 times the charm. So we start out methodically looking at the departments, and in this case, we do, and I'm just picking a name. So I use the word procurement. I wanted to find out who the people are in procurement in this department, and the department we're looking at would be Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. I started out in the letter A's, and you can see it's procurement. And then you'll see that Susan Albert, the first one is highlighted. And then there she shows up in the phone book. That would be how her listing is. What I like to point out to people at this point is when you look at the word organizations, you'll look down, you see Canada, Agriculture, Agri. That's almost like a food chain, I call it, or like letter or chain of command. When you get down to the bottom, you would see that Susan Albert, she's in digital procurement management. But you can click on planning and portfolio management. That would probably show a director. Strategic management would probably show a director general. So you can almost see how you can go up if you want to escalate if you don't hear back from somebody. Word that I used to mention is I typically, a lot of times, it was a real outreach cold call, I'd start at a manager, right? If we didn't have like a certain person. But certainly I would try Susan Albert and kind of talk like that. And so once you start, you make that connection. Now, okay, now what do we do? Okay. So I have my page 1 open, I have my page 2 open, and then I go to my page 3. Page 3 is basically what we call our supply arrangement standing offers. It's an Excel spreadsheet of every supply arrangement or standing offer in the entire federal government. Last time I counted it, and it's been a long time, I didn't count them individually. I just looked at the list and went all the way down. It was well over 10,000. What I like to call, I have a kind of a nickname for it. I call it the cha-ching page for a number of reasons. What a lot of people don't realize is the supply arrangement standing offers, what they're really created for are procurement people within the government. We only create supply arrangements and standing offers for products we buy a lot of. So we buy a lot of something, chances are we're going to create a supply arrangement. Hence why I love this page, because it means everything on this page is what we buy a lot of. So I tell people not to print it because it's updated. I say every week, probably every day. And so this is, again, another important tool, what I call putting the whole recipe together. So when you go to this page with the link, you'll click on it. You'll see this little over on the right where it says go to resources. This is where it will open up as an Excel spreadsheet. I'm just gonna. So as I said, don't print it, but certainly you got to download, open some of the spreadsheet. Again, it's a keyword search document. And what you do is you go over to the right, and I'll show you what it looks like. There's a little icon over here that says editing or analyze data to the right. You kind of hover over editing. There'd be a drop-down box. And in that drop-down box, you again would use keywords. So when you put the drop in, it'll show up like this. You put a keyword in furniture, and every contract that would have the word furniture in it would actually show up in this little box that you see here. But behind that, what you'll see is on the left-hand side, you'll see the cells listed from 137 to 140, 161, and you'll see the transport office seating. But again, because the word furniture was in the brackets, if you look on the header line there. And I usually close that little box, and then I go to the line where it was corresponding, where I just showed you. And when you get to that line, it'll show you everything you want to see. So I've kind of highlighted in red. Too bad the system wouldn't do this because it'd be awesome. I've made that kind of recommendation because it kind of blends in. It takes a while to look at. But as you scroll across, it'll tell you everything you need to know about the contract. It'll tell you who the buyer was or who the company is. And it'll even tell you the supply arrangement number that they're on. Typically, when you look at it a lot as well, is it'll show the companies above and below that are in that same category. They tend to lump them together. You can kind of see above that. Some like the shredders, there's a lot of companies in there. So once you have that supply arrangement number, we can actually help you find out the particulars on how you get on it. Majority of these supply arrangements are ongoing or constantly being updated. In the case of like professional services, which is consulting, it's updated every 3 months. And so if you can find out, the supply arrangement number makes it much easier for us to find out who the contracting specialist is that you'd want to talk to. And it just speeds things up a little bit. And then I talked to another thing I mentioned to people here is to just if you're looking for opportunities, start at the top of the page and just scroll all the way through this, all the way down through the entire SOSA, because you'll find things that you may not even thought about that actually do fit in your space. When you're looking at different products, you'll go, oh, I know a little about that. Well, great thing about that is you'll see that there's big corporations in a lot of cases that have those supply arrangement numbers. You can reach out to them for the possibility to collaborate. If you're a woman-owned, or in the case of Indigenous, the government has the Indigenous procurement policy. These corporate organizations are always looking for other equity deserving groups to kind of work with. I just saw one yesterday that was it was for, I think it was for like engineering or something. Somebody had sent it to me, and they were looking for what they call underrepresented groups, which would be women-owned, Black-owned businesses, that sort of stuff. So there are opportunities in there, and that's something we can talk about as well if you reach out a one-on-one or with PAC. I typically kind of look for what are the angles, I call it, of what we can as leverage for yourself in order to utilize to get more business. As I talked about earlier, there is 10 commodities that are mandatory that the federal government uses. What I mean, sorry? Oh, so typically a supplier or a procurement person cannot go outside and just do a call up. Like say it was a chair. You need to be on the pre-qualified list for furniture in order for them to work with you. It just kind of keeps integrity of pricing and things like that. And that's what's the whole idea of this. You'll see office supplies. Chances are these are the products we buy the most of anything. And you kind of look at it and make sense, because you'll even see pro services, which is billions and billions of dollars. So sometimes it's great to look at this just to kind of get an idea of what we buy the most of. So that's it, 3 steps. And it's really, like I said, it's what I used, and it was just a place to start. And each page, I typically, when I do one-on-ones, I'll go through this with somebody, and I'll learn a little bit about their product and or service, and I'll give my recommendations on how to do the search, and then kind of work you through it. I call it homework. And I got to tell you, 80 to 90% of the time, I get an email back going, "Hey, I get it. This is easier than I thought." Something I like to add a little bit is, at the time, I think when we put this together, when I joined the federal government, I kind of knew it was around 200 million. I sold my last business, Adirondack. It was a professional services consulting company in 2021. Today, that company, I think the last time I saw it, is over $600 million in contracts. By the way, everything we did and started from was from low dollar value. And a nice example I use of how that could work is when I first started selling furniture, I went to the Department of Foreign Affairs. Turned out Foreign Affairs already had a contract in place with another company a manufacturer, American manufacturer. And so first thing I learned about that kind of burst my bubble a little bit, but hey, wasn't so bad. So we started talking about other things, about chairs and desks and things like that. And so they ended up buying a chair from me because it was, same chairs as the other company. Everybody sells, multiple chairs and things like that. And I started selling them a chair. Then they ended up buying a desk off me. Then they bought a couple of desks off us. Then they actually asked us if we could move some cubicles around, which was part of our service, and we did that. Over the course of the next couple of years, they got to understand what our capacity was. I got to learn about their department. And when it came time for them to retender, which was 3 years, when they brought out the specs for the tender, now I talked about contracting people. Contracting people are the people that put the paperwork together, the technical specs. They're not the people that they get provided the specs by somebody. So the folks that I was working with in foreign affairs started learning that the manufacturer that I was working with, Technion, which is a Canadian manufacturer, who the first time around they didn't meet the spec, or actually the spec wasn't broad enough or general enough, I guess, for them to meet it. This time around, the department got to know a little bit about me, and so when they wrote the spec general enough that we could actually bid it. I always say the contracting people don't know what they don't know, and that's where there's a little bit of misconception because people get upset and say, "Well, it's fixed, it's free." No, it's not. They write them majority of the time. They get provided that information. They wouldn't even know what a Technion workstation or the chairs look like. They never see them. They just get these technical specs. That's the whole importance of getting in early, getting in at a low dollar value, developing that relationship with the department. Great thing about once you get in, and if they like you, they can keep doing low dollar value purchases all day long, and you can make a really good living. There's this one guy I used to run into when I started doing furniture, and he used to sell these chairs called Herman Miller Aeron chairs. Now, this was around the early 2000s. We'd be going into buildings, building these cubicles and stuff. So we'd have tractor trailer loads of trucks showing up and we'd be offloading this stuff. This guy would show up with a little van, clean suit on, 3 or 4 of these chairs, 4 or 5 sometimes, depending. And he'd be wheeling them off into the office and into the building, and he'd be down the lobby and he'd call upstairs. Back then, you could kind of freely walk around the building and or use the phone. And people would come downstairs to see these phones. And typically he would go after or target the people that would, like, contracting officers, assistants to the director general, people that were, doing routine tasks all day long. And these chairs were very ergonomic. They're about 2,500 bucks a chair. And he made about $500 a chair because I remember him telling me this. And every time we saw him, he probably sold 3 to 4 of these chairs every time I ran into this guy. So he's like, 4 of these chairs, that's like $2,000 a day. In 2000, he's in the Cayman Islands now. Well, I'm still working. So, yeah, but
Barry, I have a couple of questions from the
sure, please.
I just wondered, a couple of people are sort of inquiring about professional services.
Okay.
Like what kind of things, like if you have strictly as a woman an online business, but you're a consultant, et cetera, do you have any insight on that for?
Well, as I said, my last business was in the professional services, and it's the one that gets all the media attention these days because of the sheer number of contracts and volume in terms of dollars. And afterwards, whoever the people are, I welcome you to reach out to me because one of the things that I've done since I never throw anything away. Like, to me, data is gold and information is gold. I still have computers in the basement here, like MX66s with stuff on them. I have all the information on all the categories of every category we use. And even in the terms of the dollars that we spent, I was invited, and this is probably like 2018 or so, when they were doing what they call the modernization of consulting services. And so we had a roundtable, and I got all the figures and things like that of what are the services we buy. So pro services is a great opportunity because people have this misconception that, hey, I'm not really sure if I can compete in that space.
Mhm.
Well, something a lot of people don't realize is the big players, and all KPMGs and Deloitte's of the world, they don't have 200, 300 consultants sitting on a floor waiting for business. When they win a contract, they typically go and look for subcontractors in that space.
Yeah,
And that's where the opportunity is because they don't have these people on staff sitting waiting for business. They bring them on as the projects require.
yeah.
How do I find those? Well, I go right back to that page 3. You remember the Excel spreadsheet that showed the all the companies? That's how you can find the information.
That's fantastic.
Right. And so and women owned is it's coming up more and more and more and more. It's we have a social procurement. It's all coming, and I know
Great.
we're still waiting for it. So I welcome you to reach out to me,
Yeah.
and I'll help you navigate that space. But it's definitely Like it's very lucrative space. Great thing about it when you get on that, they do have what they call a call up threshold, and in a lot of times until they meet that threshold, they don't have to go competitive. They can actually just self-direct it to you. Something else I always say to people is, I get a lot of people going, you know what? I've been on that pro services list for 2 years now or a year. I never get a call. Some of these categories have hundreds and hundreds of companies. I'll use temporary help as one of them. Unless you're doing outreach, they're not going to remember you.
Yeah.
You need to be kind of making that connection daily, weekly, monthly, at least getting out of sight, out of mind is the way I call it.
Yeah.
And I used to look for a lot of reasons why to kind of reach out to them. One of the greatest things that ever happened to me was when HubSpot came up with this whole automated kind of process where you could do outreach. And every 3 months, I had it set up that I would actually reach out to somebody and I'd say, "Hey, it's Barry. I just wanted to see how things are going." And it didn't say the word HubSpot. It looked like it came from my email. I was amazed at how many calls I would get based on that. So there's a lot of kind of in technology today in AI, it's like so much more helpful. But you got to be in front of these people. Like
Yeah.
most of the time, I don't think they'll ever see them request more than 10 companies if they
Yeah.
want to make it a competitive process, unless it's a large multi-million dollar contract, then they'll go to everybody.
Okay, so we have two other questions, and then Sherry's got her hand up, so she wants to talk to you. So the first question was, you don't have to be like, your business doesn't have to be located in Ottawa for you to like get these contracts, right? Like we're here in BC, and somebody's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, can you be successful if you don't live in Ontario?
Back when I started, I would have said no. That's why I drove to Ottawa every day.
Oh, gee.
Um, Probably, I tell people one of the greatest things that I've seen happen, well, two things, is the COVID changed everything.
Yeah,
It evened the playing field. It really did. And now when you look at how even the government procurement people now, how they don't want to be down in town, Ottawa, they want to work from home.
yeah,
Nobody, and so whether you're in Stittsville, Ontario, or Vancouver, BC, it doesn't matter to them anymore, as long as you can deliver the project. There's a company I deal with that's out of Victoria, and he's been getting business in Ottawa.
yeah.
And again, what I was able to do was I was able to introduce them to a company that I knew in Ottawa, and they collaborated on some things. So that's the greatest thing that's happened. The other thing I call it a close second, which a lot of people don't realize, is the changing of the guard.
Mm,
Everybody said, "Oh man, it's an old boys club." It's you know what? I got to tell you, it was like that.
yeah,
It really was one time like that. I can remember days when I'd go to a large, large department and there'd be one person that would control everything, literally everything. Everything had to go through that person, the
yeah.
gatekeeper. Those people have all retired.
Oh, great.
Right. And the new generation are so transparent and equal footing. And that's what I
Yeah,
really like. So you take that plus the fact that it doesn't matter where you are, right?
no.
As long as you're able to deliver.
The digital world now.
Yeah.
So, okay, Sherry, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask Barry your question. And I just want to remind everybody that you're all welcome. Barry's been very generous by saying you can have a one-on-one with him if you contact him via email. But Sherry, we've got some time, so go ahead, and Maria, or you can be next. Sherry, go ahead.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. Um, I'm in the United States. I live in Miami, and I'll just similar to the question that you were talking about. I'm in transportation and logistics. We transport my car hauling the boats and um, any autos. So nationwide, door to door, So that's what I was wanting to know is how if you're like here in the United States, how is it possible?
Well, actually, first of all, I'm sorry to hear you're in Miami, but secondly, and, and believe it or not, I'm familiar with doing business in the U.S. I'm Indigenous, so I belong to KMC up here in Canada, which is kind of the sister organization to the NMSDC. So I'm very familiar with the logistics and things like that because from a corporate perspective, I know that there's a lot of companies here in Canada that are corporate members of NMSDC. Um, one of the other things that being the US, now you're the first person I've actually, this is kind of interesting, that is interested in Canadian. It may be easier for you to collaborate with somebody up here in Canada and bring your expertise, right? There may be somebody sitting in, here in the room that's looking for somebody to partner with. And I'm a huge fan of collaboration because when you look at my success, I tell everybody it wasn't me, it was the people I partner with. And you've heard us talk about pro services. I got to tell you, 80% of all those, it's a collaboration of some sort because it's the way they meet the criteria. And so even, you're in Miami, that doesn't, you probably have years of experience at this. And that's typically what government procurement people are looking for. They're risk averse, right? They really are. And again, a perfect example of doing something small. I know National Defense has supply arrangements for moving stuff around in the country. We have moving services, which is another supply arrangement. I know that I'm familiar with. I would recommend, Sherry, you and I talk offline, and I can see if I can kind of work with you.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
great.
So I am a veteran and working on the JCP self-assessment right now for DLA. So look
Yeah,
forward to
Sherry, go
reaching.
ahead. Oh, I was going to say, go ahead and make sure you send Barry an email because it'll be a lot easier sort of to talk one-on-one with.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I look
Lena,
forward to it.
Lena, you're next. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes,
Have to,
yes,
there you
thank
go.
you, Barry, for your generosity today. I'm not sure if I'm in the right place because I am a coach. So I can coach like wellness in workplaces. I'm a wellness coach, a life coach, and I was just looking up coaching in the contract section, and I do see some coaching contracts there, but I don't know if I'm in the right place as a coach or if I contact these people that have contracts. That's my question.
Well, a couple of right off as you mentioned that, yeah, because I've seen coaching, and so page 1 would be a good place to start doing that coaching in there. Page 3 would be another good one because you could see if there's been some larger contracts that have been awarded in that space. And if there is, then you could probably reach out to those companies because I suspect that, well, first of all of our departments are national, right? So typically they would rather have a coach that's kind of more, especially if it's in a person, like if you're in Vancouver, right? Our office is downtown. I'm thinking coaching, especially in the wellness space, is probably a lot of in-person stuff, I would suspect, in some ways. I know, unfortunately for us, the cutbacks, wellness, I'm not sure would be on the top of the list for expenditures. We've even had our travel budgets cut, so it's getting pretty tough. But I know from personal experience that there are some folks I've worked with, and I think it's WeBC folks actually that have been successful in the coaching space.
Okay.
Again,
And,
we could. Sorry, I was going to say, Lena. Again, you and I could take this offline and explore it one-on-one.
oh yeah, that would be great. I'm on LinkedIn. I see your contact information. I'm a little bit confused about the page 1, 2, and 3. I did the coaching search okay, but then I got lost in the
So yeah,
Excel.
series. So page 1 is, do we buy it, and like who we bought it from. Page 2 is the who bought it. The who to talk to,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then page 3 is, like I said, the supply arrangements. It's the one, if we buy a lot of it, it'll be there. And you and I can go through that. I'm glad you're a little confused because I'd like you to play with it till we chat, and then we can fine tune it. Your space probably will be a lot with more in the corporate world, and I actually shared with Jennifer what I call equity deserving groups, and Weeby has corporate supporters that and here's something I tell people, I wouldn't just look at in this document, I wouldn't just look at Weeby corporate supporters. I look at all the different corporate supporters from all the various organizations, whether it be Indigenous, CAMC, which is Canadian Aboriginal Supplier, because typically within those corporate structures themselves, that all falls under ESG. And ESG is very broad, right? So the fact that you're a woman-owned business, chances are, they may show you on a CAMC or a CCAB, They may be a corporate supporter for that, but chances are they have an ESG policy from buying from women-owned businesses as well. So that's something you and I'll talk about when we chat one-on-one.
Thank you, Barry.
Thanks. And, Barry, I just want to make a comment as well. I mean, everybody, if this is the first or second time that you've really, kind of explored this idea of dollar value, bidding, etc., you're not going to get it all today. Like it's, it's not all going to be in your head and it's going to be perfect, but it's a process like anything else. And you can't expect to get a $10,000 or $15,000 contract on your first go. So the whole idea is now that, Barry's giving you some great information and those 3 steps are really invaluable. If you take advantage of the one-on-one with him, I guarantee you, you'll be that much further. And then the next step would be maybe reaching back to EBC for more information and then, maybe back to Barry. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of step 1 on the journey and we've had Barry before, but basically this is the sort of the roadmap to what you're doing. So yeah, we've got so many questions in the chat.
Yeah,
And I'm like, oh,
something if you're looking for a quick hit or
yeah,
chances are it's not going to be here. But I got to tell you, with patience and you keep pressing, it can be done. It's very easy. And it's much easier market to sell to than the private sector because
yeah,
the federal government has to be, they want to be transparent. They want you to be successful, right? Small
yeah,
businesses,
yeah,
that's the lifeblood of the country.
for sure.
And you're not asking a lot. When I say it's up to 25,000, it doesn't, a catering bill could be $100, could be $200, right?
Yep.
Start out small and just keep building, right?
Moving.
Everybody's risk averse, especially in the government.
Yeah.
But they'll give you a little bit at a time, and
Yeah.
there's a company that they're in the construction side, and I happen to know from being in the furniture business, I got to make a lot of connections. And if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see that. They started around the same time I did. I came here for 90 days, by the way, 3 years ago. I'm still here. But so they got about $60 million in contracts, but they're a construction company, just kind of being methodical, starting out real small and getting to meet people and people giving them a little bigger and bigger jobs.
Yeah.
And now they're, actually I know 2 companies that are like that. I typically say to really get to a point where you could consider the government a major client, it's probably a year to year and a half. If anybody tells you they can shorten it for that, they're just taking your money.
Yeah.
Because I would say a year and a half. But the great thing about the federal government is it's not going away and they pay their bills.
For sure. Okay, we're at about 10 minutes till 11. So if anybody has another question, I think I see who is the next person. Nazanin, do you want to ask your question? Unmute yourself.
Yes. Yes. Hi, Barry. Thank you for this session. And it's such a new arena for me. So what is the difference? Like, this is just very one-on-one. What's the difference between bidding and procurement? And also, if like this is very basic, like even I just don't even understand that. I'll send a link that I was just like looking at BC bids. And is this bid, for example, like if you can just tell us, like, is this bid closed? Is it assigned? How does that work? Is it assignment? Is it like when it says by invitation, how can you get on the invitation? Like, how can you like be going in so that you can be invited even? Like,
that's a good, that's a great, the invitation one. I don't think we've ever talked about that, Kathy.
Okay.
So invitation's a great one because you have to be invited, but all you have to do is reach out to the contracting person and they'll invite you. Typically, that's the way it usually works. Because I don't want to call it that they're kind of lopping people off, but they just don't want everybody under the sun kind of, bidding on it. The word procurement, by the way, is, it's just a word. It's a broad word. It's a broad phrase, right? I think years ago with the word buyer, and, I think about supply chain. Procurement's just kind of all of that. Think is that, I know it can be confusing, but think of procurement is just the space we're in, right? And the
Okay.
sales space, I guess. and then bidding is, going back to, it's the same as if somebody wants a quote. Think of it that way. It's very basic thing. It would be a quote, and they'll ask three quotes instead of three bids. And the same thing happens in low dollar value, by the way, a lot of times. If they want a chair, sometimes some departments will say, I need three quotes. Other departments, they can just buy it. And that's what I was talking about, learning the personality of a department. You'll learn that through time. And you'll find out some departments are just too difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
Really, because they'll ask, and that's more of a transparency thing. Because a lot of them, how would you like to be the PC, what is it, PSPC guys that are in IT for what's that, ArriveCan? I got to tell you, those guys are real gun shy now. They'll be asking for a lot, right? Because they got raked over the coals. And so that's all that's about. So you'll learn personalities. And I can't even stress enough of it. There's 172 that I counted, and every single one had a different personality.
So again, the short answer is, questions like this can be covered with Barry one-on-one.
Mhm.
And basically, again, you're just learning, this session is going to be emailed to you later. You can watch it a couple of times and then, start your journey. Say to yourself, you want to kind of make this happen in this year or next year, and how are you going to do it step by step? We've got a couple more questions. I'm just going to take one more because we just have 5 minutes. So Sheena, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Barry, for sharing your expertise and lived experience with us. You mentioned earlier about outreach emails. Do you have any suggestion or advice on how do we approach the outreach email so that it doesn't sound too salesy, but a little bit personalized as well?
You know what? That's because that was my forte, was actually email is how I got in. Really, and perseverance. I always say I earned a PhD through all of this. Perseverance, hard work, and dedication. And all three of those actually make sense. When you're doing outreach, like that's why you'll hear me say keep the first one short. Chances they're not going to read. They get hundreds of emails. One thing that the media, they talk about all these people in the government and that consultant. The people that are in the procurement side, it's the same people that were there 15 years ago. Except that they're being asked to do more with less of them, and so they try to filter through as quick as they can, and so typically my philosophy is you'll get business from the government on a low dollar value. If you started chasing it and methodically went after it, eventually you'll get business. It's just how patient you want to be. So like, and this is something I talk about. I even have the templates still from what I used to use because I would use them so often. I just share them with people and say, here, personalize them. First one was, like I said, very short. Go to my HubSpot, remind me 2 weeks from now or a week from now, reach out to this person. I call that person the week, then the third. So by the third, fourth week, which is my third outreach, in that third one, I then talk about why I want to meet with it and what I do and things like that. They want to get you off their desk if they're not that person. And because everything is tracked in the government, we can't even when we delete an email, it's still in the system. You hear this ATIP. So the last thing that any of us want to do is have somebody complain that we're not getting back to them. But they won't answer after the first one because we get we call them one and done. So I get 30, 40 a week. I never hear from them again.
Yep.
Right.
And that's why the follow-up phone call is important too. Like if you can't reach them one way, you can possibly reach them another way.
If you were to do this and track this, email, phone, email, and so you've done 3 times, nobody's reached out to you. You went to your member of parliament. That member of parliament then goes to that minister of that department. I got to tell you, the crap hits the fan all the way down why we didn't get back to you. And I've seen it happen lots of times here in our emails. And they take it very seriously. And I got from a deputy minister all the way down. Everybody's got to answer why we didn't get this person, or like, it's very serious.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. If you're patient, there is a reward. Like I talked about driving back and forth to Ottawa. It was 4 hours when I first started, out of the trunk of my car, listening to Amway cassettes that keep me awake at 4 a.m. But you know what? It got easier when I got there. You know what?
Yeah.
The first couple times, it's like anything, you're making that first introduction but with the second or third time, they were saying, "Hey Barry, you know, what color chairs do you have in this? Do you have, you know?" So
Yeah.
you're getting invited now, right? And then it's up
Yeah.
to you to do something with it.
Yeah.
Great thing about I like about email is if you're an introvert or it's doing the talking for you. So there's no real special skill, and that's what allows you to do that. And I can kind of help you kind of learn how to craft those emails up and things like that as well.
I would
Great.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, Barry, we got to get going.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna say, you know, I'm gonna start sharing my screen again, and we're gonna say thank you so much to Barry for being
Thank
here
you.
today. I mean, he is the most generous individual that there is that you'll ever meet from the federal government and Procurement Assistant Canada. So please contact him again if you would like to speak with him. If you forget the email address, or you know, you don't get your recording from us right away, send us an email tomorrow. We'll get that back to you. So thank you so much,
Oh,
Barry. Oh, go
one
ahead.
thing I forgot. I forgot to mention ideas. Remember we talked about this?
Oh,
Uh,
right.
so I'm brutal at this. So one of the things that we have to do at Procurement Assistance Canada is talk about a program called Ideas. And I think, Jennifer, if you can pop it into the chat. Ideas is if any of you on the call are into what I call like research, or you're coming up with new products and things like that. Ideas has funding for new technologies and things like that. And it just doesn't have to be defense based. It could be for anything. If you have a look at the chat, the link in the chat, it'll take you over to that site and have a look at it.
Yeah.
I know there's people within our department out in Vancouver that they've got some suppliers, so they can tell you've got millions of dollars in research money through that program.
And you know, I signed up for their email, and it was really simple, and it just
Yeah,
came once a month, and it talked about what they were looking for, and it was
pretty cool
really
stuff.
good just to have for, like, you know, reference. So thanks for that, Barry.
All right, no worries.
I just wanted to let everybody know that we've got these great programs at WBC that are just completely online. You can sign up to figure out your HR, your finances, your strategic marketing. You work through them on your own for 90 days. And after that, you end up with a marketing plan or an HR plan or a cash flow. So please check them out and register. This is some things coming up. We're talking about part 2 to this is August 21st, next week. A guide to government contracts, how to sell, prepare, and deliver. And then the 28th is the last session, a guide to government contracts. Oh, yeah, we've got different titles probably. And we're doing an AI workshop, which everybody is interested in. So if you want to learn more, please sign up for our e-blast newsletter. And that would be, you know, you'd get one email from us every month, and you'd have all this stuff that you could sign up for on your phone. Last but not least, I hope everyone's still around. We'd love you to fill out our feedback poll just to let us know if this webinar was something that interested you. You were kind of learned something from it. Please take a minute to fill it out, and that just helps us at WBC. And if you want to make a suggestion on another webinar that you'd like to see, maybe you'd like a 2-hour Barry webinar, you know, write it down. We'll just contact him and ask. So yeah, if you could fill out the feedback poll, that would be great. And for any of you that have to go, thank you very much for being here today. Thank you so much for Barry to be here, and we'll see you at the next one. We'll leave this up for a minute or two, but thanks very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day, everybody.